How to transmute pain into joy. We all go through dark times. Some of our big tests come from providence or fate. Some come from people in our lives hurting us, and others come from us hurting others. Today we will focus on transmuting pain into joy when we have been the aggressor. I am paradoxically starting with this last option because I am doing this video for one of my dear friends who needs it right now. When the pain comes from what we did to someone else, it means that at least we have developed a more sensitive consciousness to allow this deep conviction of responsibility towards others. Usually we tend to not always understand how badly we hurt someone else. But when we do and then deeply repent, sometimes we can't forgive ourselves. Although we need to identify with our victim and accept to go through the same agony they have been to truly grasp what it meant to them, then we need to let go and move on to transmute pain into joy. We need to do our share in repairing what we did to our victims. Sometimes we can only send good thoughts and prayers to our victim. Other times we can help in many ways, restoring the damage we created. So now let us divide this process into 4 stages. At first, we might not understand completely the evil action we did and its implications in the life of our victim. We might even justify, rationalize our actions by putting the blame on our victim. Too often we hear the rapists excuse their actions by words such as, "she was looking for it." In a couple, one can argue that the defects of his partner were the excuse on him or her cheating. One can feel sorry, but one can harden his or her heart, putting progressively the blame on their partner, refusing to admit personal responsibility. Unfortunately for many of us, we tend to remain at this stage and bury deep down our bad action. If we keep doing this, it would lead us to hurting more and more people, with less and less bother from hardening our heart energy. Someone told me once, those who are spectators to a bloody corrida and have fun in seeing an innocent bull repeatedly stabbed to death and in pain, have hardened their hearts so much they might find it normal to stab their wife because she speaks too much. Sadly, we sometimes don't realize how much the hard barrier of our Cartesian ego rationalizing habits create, blocking our heart energy. If we never stop this ugly process, we will find ourselves at the end of our lives looking into the picture of Dorian Gray, ready to reap the terrifying eternal consequences of the cruel choices of our ego. However, some of us find into their higher self enough love to open to divine grace, and not satisfied to inspect their actions, motives at the light of their selfish ego, they open up to their higher self, to universal light and love. The first step is an eye-opening grace, granting us to take responsibility. Our first grace is eye-opening, granting us to take responsibility for our actions, as vile as they can be. Like Peter was granted, Jesus asked him 3 times if he loved him. Peter knew the shame of betraying the one he loved. However, he did not realize yet completely what it meant at the light of universal love. When Peter betrayed Jesus, he cried and left. He did not bother to go back to correct his denial, but fled to save his life. Still, his own life and own interest were more important than his love for Jesus. Although he felt the bitterness of not being at the height of his former love declaration to Christ. It's only when he heard the cock crow that he remembered the prophetic words of Jesus that before the 3rd time he would betray him. Peter needed to deepen his awareness of what it means to wrong others. The second step is to acknowledge that nothing our victim did was in any way responsible for our free choice to aggress her or him. When we really take responsibility for our actions or our reactions, we stop finding excuses and blaming our victim. We admit that whatever the victim's faults or actions against us, we are free to act, react our own way. Hence, we cannot blame the victim in any way for our own free choice. The fact that we went overboard or we could not control ourselves, too, has nothing to do with the victim, even though the victim may have provoked us. There is always another option. It is our responsibility to do some work on ourselves, to learn to control ourselves. The third step is to receive a deeper grace to identify with our victim agony. Then we sometimes get a deeper grace, which is to identify with our victim and understand from inside how our betrayal felt for her. Jesus' passion for us led him to take our place and to feel how we feel inside when lonely, wronged, and in terrible pain. A grace for us to relieve the terrible pain we imposed on someone else, seen from inside, seen from their angle through universal love, is often granted to those who are willing to open up to divine compassion. At this point, we are literally bathed in the mud of the hellish ugliness of our wrongdoing and the horrid impact it has created in another precious life. This awakening goes from crying to living a real inner agony. Although this progression seems unbearable at times, it is deeply healthy, for it contributes to cleanse us inside through understanding what we did with such disgust that we will never do it again. It's paramount to have the courage to go through this cleansing process From this stage, the temptation can easily arise to start beating yourself up, blaming yourself, and drowning into guilt. Remaining stuck at this level would be terribly damaging and unhealthy, whilst taking responsibility is healthy, blame and guilt deeply negative. It will only lead to procrastination, then regression.
Donc la bienveillance,